This time on Heavy Pedal Garage, I'm going to give you my dirty little secret. I'm going to share with you how I paint and spray primer in this dirty garage and minimize the trash that I have. We're also going to keep moving along on these doors, the fenders, the trunk lid, and at the end of the video you're going to get to see some color on these things. We're going to spray some Sparkling Merlot Pearl and some clear coat. And if you're new to the channel, this is a channel where you get to see this 1975 Firebird come back to life, so you're going to want to stick around to see it get back on the road. So let's get right to it, and I'm going to show you how we do this in this dirty old garage here. A lot of times you'll see the guys with the pressurized sprayers. You know, they spray out their wax and grease remover, they're doing their, their pre-paint check, they're using it to knock off any impurities so you don't have fish eyes. But I don't have one of those pressurized sprayers, and I'll tell you this works just as well. So I get my wax and grease on here, and I wipe it off, I flip my rag, and you're just trying to wipe that surface down to make sure you don't have any impurities. At this point in the process, I could be wearing gloves. Right now I'm just being very careful to not really touch the panels a whole lot because I don't want to transfer grease from my hands onto this. So pretty much once this is all wiped off with wax and grease remover, I'll go over it one more time with the Windex just to make sure that we get any more of the dust off of it. Just checking my work as I go around. Each time I'm wiping this down, it's an opportunity to check your tape edge, make sure everything's sticking right and that you didn't miss anything. So I'm just spraying in a dirty garage here, and in my experience you can do it. It's not a problem. You might have some trash to deal with, but really, it's all about the prep. And as I've been mentioning, I spend a lot of time before I spray sealer or paint just wiping these panels down, blowing them off, and I keep going until my rags are clean. Now I'm just using a white paper towel here to see if I'm picking up anything. I'm going to go around and blow these off again just to make sure that I got everything, and then after this we should be ready. As far as the garage prep goes, you see I hang some plastic on some things, mostly because I don't want the overspray to get on them, not so much to keep the dust down. So I just blow my garage out really good. I use my air nozzle for my compressor and spray off my bench and all the parts and pieces, and then I use a leaf blower to just blow all the dust out. And I take a good 15-20 minutes just blowing the dust out every time I spray. This time around I'm spraying actual paint, so I'm being even more careful with making sure I blow everything out. When it's just primer, I've done it before where I didn't even blow the garage out. So it's just a matter of how much time and effort based on what part of the process you're in and how much you want to go into it. But this has worked out pretty good for me. And when I actually paint the exterior of the car, not the jambs aren't as big of a deal as the exterior. I think I'll even go one step further, and I'll probably hose the floor down, maybe even power wash the floor out, make sure it's wet, and even do a really good spring garage cleaning and cover the surfaces on the exterior with plastic to keep the dust down. So more than just worried about overspray on things that time, I would actually put plastic up around here to keep the dust from coming down onto your surface. Okay, so this is the part where I break out my tack rag and my air. I always keep my tack rags in a Ziploc bag, and when I do this, kind of flop it out a little bit. Don't want to ball it up, and you definitely don't want to rub it into the surface because there's glue on here or whatever the heck it is that's sticky. So I just kind of get it spaced out, and then I'll just kind of loosely wrap it up. And again, I've donned my gloves now because I am definitely going to be touching the surface and I don't want to get oils and greases, especially at this point. So my gun, I basically turned the air up just a little bit more than what I'm going to be spraying with. And the idea here is to move the dust off of the surface with a little bit more air than what I'm going to use. That way, when I lower the air pressure, it's not going to be loosening things up because I used a greater air pressure to spray it off with. So I'm just going to go around and lightly rub my tack rag over top of it as I'm going. I'm also going to be paying attention to, like I mentioned before, my hose management. I've got a lot of different stands and stuff here that I'm going to have to work around, and I want to have a good plan for when I shoot, because the last thing I want to do is take my hose, wrap it around one of these stands, give it a tug to get to the next piece, and then knock that piece over. Don't ask me how I know. Just so you know, I'm just a guy in the garage like you guys doing this. Take everything that I tell you with a grain of salt. Everything that I've learned comes from the internet and YouTubers like you guys out there. So, you know, just know that this is my process. May not be 100% correct, but it works for me. Pretty much what I've learned here too is that I need to keep my airflow to a minimum. What I use is a ventilation system that is up in my attic, and I have a few vents in my ceiling here that I use to evacuate the air that's in this room. I crack a door and it just, you know, slowly moves that air out. I'm not running any big fans to really keep that airflow down to a minimum. I spray and then I get the heck out of here. When I actually paint the car, I will have a little more inflow air that'll be filtered. I'm going to lift my door up and put some furnace filters or some paint filters underneath. But that's how I do it. Keep your parts clean, clean, clean. Spray them down with air really good, tack rag them, and then keep that airflow to a minimum so that you're not moving a bunch of junk around. And that's the ticket to spraying in a dirty garage. So as always, we're going to be spraying the PPG CRE epoxy thinned down according to the tech sheet to be able to use that material as a sealer. But when I'm over here, I got everything set up. I got my stir stick ready to go. I have 2 paint cups that I keep handy. One is going to be marked out with my mix ratio all ready to go so that when I'm pouring, I can see it and it's not a, you know, an issue. And then I have my other cup here, which is where I put, you know, spent solvent that I'm using to clean out my gun and bits and pieces like that. So this is kind of like a waste cup that I like to have. And then of course I got my filters ready to go and my lovely Harbor Freight gun and paint gun stand here is ready to go. So then we crack it open, put our mask on, crack it open, and start mixing up this sealer. Make sure you wear that even when you're mixing up your paint, because that's when you start getting into the methyl ethyl bad stuff. You'll breathe that in, no good for your lungs. Okay, so that was just the first coat of sealer. It was just a real light tack coat. And basically what that's going to do is, you know, put a light coat of paint on there, and it'll act as a glue for those next layers so that you don't have the runs and the sags that you might if you just laid it on wet the first time. So while that's drying, I'm going to go in and check my tech sheet and just make sure I have the proper flash time in between coats. And then we'll hit it again, and I'll bring you back when it's all done. Like zero trash, guys. I really think it's all in the prep of the panel. You got to have somewhat of a clean space, but making sure that panel is cleaned off is paramount. So it's turned out pretty good. Had enough to do 2 coats. I have a few spots that probably could use a little bit more sealer, but there's enough on there to make me happy. Again, it's just jams. So we're going to mix up some Merlot Pearl, and we'll get a couple coats of this stuff laid down. We got 2 coats of base, basically 2.5. So while the second coat was still a little bit tacky, I just took my gun at a higher level and I went the opposite direction of what I sprayed. So I sprayed this way, I just went this way and did a drop coat. They say it helps align some of the pearls, which I'm pretty sure it worked, because after the second coat, I was looking at this piece that's kind of in the sun and I could see some mottling and I was like, oh no. But then I hit it, put that drop coat down, and it seemed to work pretty good. So the doors turned out good, except last night I touched up some seam sealer and the reducer in my, I'm guessing it was the base coat, because it didn't do it after the sealer, but the reducer lifted and made some of that seam sealer crackly. So no big deal. Probably the worst casualty of that is going to be over here on the driver's side door seam. You know, it just kind of made it a little bit crackly, which I can live with that. It already looked kind of rough because it's seam sealer, so I don't care. It'll be okay. If I absolutely hate it, I can always sand it down and touch it up with a little base and clear. So there you go. I'll show you the fenders, and then we'll get ready for some clear coat. We'll put that glamour on there, make it shiny. All right, it's good. Celebrate time. Let me show you how it turned out. So here we go. Not too bad at all. As I'm going over these, look for trash. Looks pretty darn good to me. And even where all of that lifting occurred, where the solvent reacted with the seam sealer, that all got buried in clear and turned out pretty sweet. Trunk lid, as you can see, there's just a couple little places here and there where I got a little bit of fuzz, but not too bad for a panel laying flat. Loving the color, guys. This is exciting. You know, the jambs on the car and that rear tail panel, that got me going, but really just seeing this all laid out on such a large area, man, it's sweet. That flop, tell you, look how dark it looks in the shade. And then over here, all together, completely purplish. But yeah, no trash. So just so you guys know, you can do this in a nasty, dirty garage. So good stuff, guys. Keep on moving. If we're not moving, our projects won't be either. Just take your time, work it out. It'll happen. So catch me next time.